Another episode of TBA Podcast. I usually start off talking, but I'm going to take a break. I'm going to let Mo run the show. Go for it.
Well, thanks a lot, Pej. Yeah, thanks for joining us, everyone, for the next episode here of TBA Podcast. It's going to be more of a somber episode than maybe what you're used to. Generally speaking, we try to keep it light, but today's topic is far from that. And we are recording this on the 21st of October. We are just coming into 2 weeks since both the Hamas attack in southern Palestine, southern Israel, and of course the 13 days of response from the Israeli government after that. It's been quite distressing, heartbreaking, everything that we've been seeing, but there have been glimmers of hope throughout this whole time. One of those was a particular video that I saw online a few days ago. I'd originally seen the video on Stand With the People Instagram and TikTok page, and then shared this video of a gem of a human being, a lovely individual that ended up resonating with so many people, so many of the followers that I have on my retail therapy clinic account, and beyond. We have the absolute pleasure and honor of having the individual in that video here with us today, and that's Aileen. Now, Aileen, I'm going to give another little bit of an intro here. The traction that video has gotten, it's already at about 1.6 million views, close to about 350,000 likes, tens of thousands of comments of support, love, and one of the most predominant questions was, who is this queen? Who is this gem? We love her. Can she be my grandmother? I want to get to know her. And so we thought it'd be an amazing thing to have you come on and tell us a little bit about yourself. So.
Wow, that's kind of hard to live up to. I don't know if I could do that. Yeah, well, thank you so much. You know, by nature, I'm kind of a shy person, so it's a little weird for me. But by profession, all my life I've been a singer and a sometimes voiceover actor. I actually have not been performing for a little while now. I really am spending most of my time as a mother and a grandmother. And that's my joy. That's my heart. So I'm originally from New York. I came out to LA as a college student when I was 17. I got very involved in this was the Vietnam War, so I got very involved in that, and I was the proverbial singer at all the rallies, the protest rallies, and I was part of SDS, which is Students for a Democratic Society, if anybody wants to look that up. And so we were, very, very big activists. And after that, I spent years and years traveling around the world and in a lot of third world countries. And because of my singing, I was able to help raise money for indigenous people kind of all over the world, and that's what I did. And when I came back, I kind of moved to Hawaii. I moved to Hawaii, and that's where my children were born and raised.
Oh, wow. And
moved back to LA 22 years ago now. Wow. Actually 5 days before 9/11.
Oh, wow.
Back, yeah. And so that's kind of my background in a nutshell.
Very good.
Amazing.
Very good. That's wonderful. Thank you. And did you see the response that the video got? How did if so, how did that make you feel?
Well, The way I saw it is a friend of mine, like I said, I've never been on TikTok. He sent me a text and he said, wow, you're TikTok famous. I said, what? I said, I've never been on TikTok ever. And he sent it to me and I was like, this is crazy. This is so bizarre. And then I started getting calls and things like that. And I looked at a lot of the responses and that's when I told my kids, and one of my, so my kids who are very, very tech savvy and very out there, and they do a lot of podcasts themselves, they've been interviewed a lot on various things. And my son said, "You need media training." I said, "I'm not doing this. I will do it once. I'm doing it once with Mo because he's a good guy, you know." But, and that's when my son got in touch. He said, "That's my mom." And that's how you got in touch with me. So the response, it literally made me cry when I saw some of the beautiful comments. And I was like, wow, well, you know, it's the least I could do. I really didn't think I said anything very profound. Like I started saying that I'm kind of a shy person, but one of the things I'm very chatty, and I am very chatty, and I'm very outspoken. I mean, in the past week, I have spoken to Uber drivers, Amazon representatives, my doctors, you know, everybody, you know, I have all my pamphlets. I will always speak what I feel is the truth for humanitarian causes. I'm not afraid of the blowback from any of it. I feel like I want to say I've reached a point in my life where I will say what I want if I feel it's the truth and without being mean. And like I saw some of those comments, it makes me feel a little bad, but it makes me feel bad only because when people don't, in my opinion, when people don't have the truth to speak, then they resort to playground bullying. I would never allow it with my grandkids or my children, and if they ever did it, they would only do it one time. That would be the last time they did it. Not punishment, but they would learn. They would understand what the consequences of that would be. And so that's the problem. When people don't have anything really to say and there's no actual conversation going on, there's just ugly things. They just say ugly things. So it has to just roll off your back, otherwise it'll make you crazy. And you have to get to that place. And it's not because I've been around a long time that I can say what I want. I've been saying this since I was 17. You know, so I mean, you know, the first time I was in Israel when I was with my parents, it was the year after the 6-Day War. I was a teenager. Right. I was siblings and my parents, and I saw it. And, you know, this was 1968. And I have like movie videos of it, movie film, I guess it was, whatever it was, no sound. It was a long time ago. And I have photos also besides the film, standing on this big deserted mount. I don't even know where it was, to be honest with you, but I'm assuming it was what is maybe Gaza now or the West Bank, because my mother was there with me, and the two of us were being filmed, and I was a little horrified. If you look on my face, I'm going, what is going on here? And you had the Israeli Offensive Forces with their sniper guns pointing down. This is 1960, pointing down. And at this point, I was a little horrified because my father had said to me, and I love my father, so I have to start that off. I mean, he's gone now, but I really did love my father, and he just knew what he knew, and we were raised as Zionists. That's all we knew. Yeah. And like I said, they were refugees from Eastern Europe, so, you know, this is what they knew. And he said, the reason the Jews have the land, this is such a terrible thing to say, is because, do you see how green it is on this side and how barren it is over here? Because they don't know how to do anything with that land. Well, little did I know at that point, but something didn't feel right. And what I didn't know at that point was, because they're controlling the water and the irrigation systems.
Exactly.
You know, and the next day I remember being at the Al-Aqsa site, and they had the big fountain there. And my sister at the time, who was 11, it was so hot she passed out. She just went down for the count. And a beautiful elderly Palestinian man, looked like an imam to me, you know, he picked her up. He literally picked her up and put her in the fountain. And a young Palestinian man came and said, you shouldn't do that. And what he looked at, he said, there's nothing more important than a life, saving a life. This fountain means nothing. Holy waters mean nothing. What's most important is saving a life. That's kind of when I fell in love with these people. Right. And I thought, what am I hearing that doesn't make any sense?
Right. So that resilience, right? I've seen so many videos now of people standing in the rubble, and their entire livelihood and their homes and family members and all that have been displaced. And there's still a smile on their face, and they're still saying, you know, at least, and there was this one video that is etched in my mind, and he's saying, no, my kids got out and our cat got out.
Oh my gosh.
I'm good. I'm okay. We'll rebuild. We've got this. And just to have that calm. Yeah. Yeah.
It's humbling. I must say, I've posted almost 100 videos on TikTok, and I haven't had the luck that you've had with the viral video. And now I understand. It's because I have this face. It's I don't have an adorable face like yours, and the words that followed it are also is obviously the fuel behind it. What I did want to ask is how was it as a child, other than the anecdote that you just shared? How was it growing up, and how long were you in Israel?
At that time, it was not long, a few weeks, yeah. And when my grandmother, every time she didn't live with us, but every time she was, like a Hasidic Jew, Orthodox Jew living in Williamsburg, Brooklyn. I don't know if you know Williamsburg, Brooklyn. They're hardcore. Yeah. And she used to say, so when my parents, when she used to come over, my father used to say, hide the bacon, I don't know. But I don't know. But she was always like, it was kind of embarrassing. Like, I would bring my friends over, and the first thing she would do is she would sit them down and to try to find out if they had any German blood in them. Mm. It's a little weird, right? And it was a little tough, I mean, this is as a smaller child, but I warned my friends, but I said, just don't say anything. Don't even go there with her, But you have to understand that most of her family was wiped out. So, there's still not an excuse, because, the way I feel is that this goes on for it's kind of like an abusive parent, like you've heard these stories of abusive parents, and then the child becomes an abusive parent when they have children, and then it goes on from generation to generation. Well, at some point, those chains need to be broken. Yeah. So who, if not, hence, if not now, when? Those chains of abuse need to be broken. And that's when it has to end. And so, so that, that's kind of how I've always thought about it. It has to end. And I used to sing in it was an Israeli nightclub, but it was really a Mideastern nightclub, because all the musicians were from all over the Mideast. They were from Lebanon. They're from all over. And I became really good friends with them. I was like 18 when I first sang there, and then my father bought the club, which was with another Israeli guy. And I didn't want to sing there anymore after that, but I did. And it was very enlightening then. To hear the stories. So it goes back a long time, but when did I actually get like totally involved? Because I've been involved in so many other issues. And then I guess it was after 9/11, really. So we're going back about 22 years when it really kind of reached a peak. And before that, let me go back a little. When I was in Hawaii, I used to actually work as a cantor. You know what a cantor is? Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. Because it's a very small community in Hawaii, and I, because I'm a singer, I learned how to lean from Torah, and I learned all that stuff. And so I used to do that. And there was one woman who converted to Judaism in our congregation, and she went to, after she converted, she went to Haifa, and then she saw what actually was going on, and then became very pro-Palestinian. And I kind of learned a lot from her, which was kind of interesting. But then in like I said, in 2001, Islamophobia really hit a huge peak at that point, as we know. And it was horrifying at that point, what I had seen, because I had a lot of, obviously, friends and everything. And I started posting things, and people started getting pretty ugly, online about it. And at that point, somebody hooked me up with a wonderful woman who is a professor of Mideast, this is on Facebook, of Mideastern studies. She's also an attorney. And she kind of became a mentor of mine. This is like back then. And I kind of, and still is, she still is, and she's amazing. And I kind of got hooked up from that with other women anywhere from the age of 50 to 90 who had been so involved. I mean, these women, I mean, in their 80s, started the flotilla. I think the first flotilla was what, 2008? I think it was. Yeah. I mean, they put their lives on the line, literally.
Absolutely.
And we became like this group of women, you know, I was humbled, completely humbled in their presence. These were fierce women from all different backgrounds, not just maybe a couple of Palestinian women. They were from all different backgrounds. And so, you know, pretty much that's how and so then I got introduced to If Americans Knew, you know, Alison Weir's organization, an amazing organization, which really, she's an amazing woman. My friend Kathy, who writes with her, we're very, very close friends. And if anybody wants to go on their site, they can learn a huge amount just from that.
Absolutely. And we'll share all those websites at the bottom of the screen here, and we'll make sure that they have them in the description.
Great.
You know, it's there's a common thread here, and that is that both in your stories that you shared and what Mo and I have been fighting to amplify over a year now, and that is women are trying to save this world, you know, and we gotta let them lead. This is my own opinion, and I think it's shared with many, but us dudes have been messing it up for a while, and again, I'm not stereotyping.
We've done our share.
But I think I feel it's time that women take the helms and save humanity, because I think, you know, what we're seeing now in multiple points of the world, not just the unfortunate events in Gaza, but, you know, we've had Ukraine, Russia, we've had, you know, the revolution in Iran, we've had Afghanistan. Unfortunately it's endless, the number. To me, and I'd love to hear your opinion on this, Aileen, but to me, it all boils down to the greed for power, and it's kind of completely gotten rid of any morals. And I feel like the moral code, the humanity behind it all is just, it's very missing, or it's empty. But share your thoughts on that.
Yeah, you know, what happened on October 7th with the bombing of civilians in Israel, I mean, it's terrible. I mean, bombing of any civilians, the capturing of hostages that are civilians in any form is reprehensible, in my opinion. It's hard to put a however in it, because I don't want to justify it, because I'm not justifying it when I say this, but I'm just saying that when people say it was unprovoked, it's not unprovoked. It wasn't unprovoked. I mean, the bottom line is, when you have a boot on your neck for, well, 75 years, it goes back even further than that, because, you know, I mean, Zionism was started as Zionism is akin to apartheid. That's what Zionism was started as, an apartheid ideology. It is apartheid. It's a separate ideology of apartheid. That's how it was started in 1896 with Theodor Herzl, with the tactic of this being, it said it in the Bible, it was the Jew. These guys, Theodor Herzl and his gang of thieves, because they were thieves, they were atheists. This was just a tactic. So apartheid was started, I mean, Zionism was started as an apartheid ideology and has continued ever since. So the whole idea is that, especially in the last 17 years, I mean, this is going on way before Hamas was ever in the picture. Hamas has been there, what, 17 years now? Let's go back to the Nakba. We all know the story of the Nakba. We don't have to reiterate it. So the bottom line is, like, okay, so you have 17 years of this, and you've got a boot on the neck of all these people. They're hanging, they're suffocating. when people are suffocating to that extent, they need to breathe. They need to breathe. Hence, they will do anything to break those chains just to breathe. You have occupation, you have siege, you have apartheid. People are going to resist. They're going to resist. And that resistance can take place in the form of violence.
Yeah.
And it very often, again, not to justify anything, any civilian lives being taken on either side ever.
Yeah.
But that's the provocation. That was what really happened. So for me, it's not about right, left, this, that. It's about humanity. I'm only going to stand here for humanity. It's just one thing.
Right.
Exactly.
We just have to. We have to feel that humanity. We have to feel that connection. I don't want it to sound super woo-woo, but the bottom line is, when you have a rainbow, you need all the colors of the rainbow, and you have it, and each color is beautiful. Mm-hmm. They're separate but together. You have a tapestry. If one thread is missing from that tapestry, it destroys the entire tapestry. It doesn't work. Yeah. 1,000-piece puzzle. Take one thing out of it, you don't have the picture.
No man is an island. We're all part of the main, right?
We're part of the whole thing. And
absolutely.
And that's humanity, and that's what it is. And so my big challenge with organized religion is that the word religion comes from the Latin word religioso, to mean to bind together. Well, as we've seen, it's done anything but that. And so that's my challenge with that. And so for me, humanity is my religion.
That's beautiful.
It is.
That's beautiful.
And to be an advocate for humanity, because that's it. It's an advocate. You say Palestinian advocate. It's a Palestinian. It's an advocate for humanity, for human rights, and we all need to be that, because it's kind of the rent we pay to live on this planet, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean,
absolutely.
That's kind of like we all have to do that, and anything else pales in comparison to that. So for me, sitting in my ivory tower, by accident of birth, being privileged, and by that I mean not being in war-torn countries like this. I mean, these children there, and they haven't seen anything but war their entire lives. Yeah. Can't even imagine what that would be like. I can't even imagine. If we talk about, well, if my grandson was bullied in school, he would only be there. He would never be there the next day. He gets pulled out. That's it. Mm-hmm. We don't wait for the second day. Can you imagine having no choice to be pulled out of anything? Yeah. So we saw that in 2014 what had happened. And
absolutely.
I was getting emails every day from Gaza in 2014. Every day, waking up to pit in my belly. It was unbelievable. People said, I can't. There's no water. We thought that was the worst, and now we're seeing this.
Yeah.
It really is. I loved what you said about that generational trauma, kind of like that abusive relationship. I remember. I remember being, I think I was 15 or 16 and going to Dachau and walking through and seeing some of the most horrific things that I had ever seen. And at no point was I thinking, these are people that are different than me that went through this. I was just looking around and going, how could someone do this to another human being? I felt that internally. And it's a matter of, how do we, and I love what you said about religion and this idea of tribalism and getting people to have that bond and togetherness and feeling that. And I've mentioned this before to Pej, where I say really what it is we need to change our paradigm of what that tribe is. It needs to be a lot larger. Our tribe is humanity. Our tribe isn't who look like us and believe like us and speak like us. Our tribe is much bigger. I ended up doing one of those DNA tests where you figure out what your background is. And I always knew that my great grandparents had actually converted from Judaism, most likely forcefully, to Islam. In their birth certificates, it said, it had their name, and then it said, convert to Islam. Like that was like a little, a suffix that they had on their name and in their birth certificates. But when I did the test, what I was amazed was to see that I had it. I think it was about 40 some odd percent Mizrahi background, some Ashkenazi in there, Indian, Greek, a few percent Viking even. Like, and when you look at that, you just step back and go, isn't this all ridiculous? Isn't everything that we're talking about here absolutely ridiculous? Like there is no division. And that's one of the things that struck me with what you were saying, is that, this is a matter of humanity. There is only one side here. It's the side of standing with humanity, and humanity dictates that children should not be bombed. Humanity dictates that they shouldn't be in a concentration camp, because it isn't an open air prison. It's a concentration camp. You have to commit a crime to go to prison. You're not born in prison. So this is a very different situation. But one of the things that really saddened me, because I knew it was true, was this idea of not feeling comfortable to speak about it. And we see that a lot. And then this is what I say, that, I come from a very different background as far as, how I was indoctrinated into activism and the way that I see the world. Pej had a very different one. The people that are around me, even those that are working with us on the revolution in Iran and trying to spread awareness, many of whom see Israel as a partner and as a friend. The enemy of my enemy is my friend, which is almost never the case. But that's the falsehood that they fall into. But there's definitely a group out there who see the injustice but can't speak. And I'd love to hear your feelings on that, because I know you mentioned it in the video that we had shared, but also it seems to be the biggest roadblock to getting where we need to be, is people finding their voice again.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that, I find that the reason I speak out, the reason I say what I want and I talk to everybody, is because I find that when I say something, that it kind of is empowering, and it enables others who may have been afraid to speak out. I find that they start agreeing, with me, and they go, tell me more, and send me information. And I know this is really horrific, and this is what I learned. And I think that, again, what's happening, tech companies, I mean, they are not hiring people. Law firms are saying they're not hiring people that are graduating from these Harvard Law School if they dare to speak out. That is complete and utter censorship. That doesn't even make any sense. That is so awful. I mean, what kind of a world are we living in? Yeah. And when you see that, especially in the United States, I don't know. I think the United States kind of is running the show here when it comes to that. When I can't believe people who are so opposed to the war in Ukraine. Wow, they don't seem to have any problem with this, at all. Yeah. And there's probably more Christian Zionists than there are Jewish Zionists, so that in this country. So that's probably a big part of it. And so it kind of shuts everybody down. People that you would never have imagined. And I see it all over, and I see all these young people who are so afraid to speak up. But I think more and more, because of what's going on and the massacre, I'm hoping that, well, not hoping, I'm just saying it seems to be backfiring for the Israelis, because maybe in this country it's a little slow going. But I think all over the world, when you see what's going on, and you see, like in Paris and Germany, they're banning the rallies, and yet there's hundreds of thousands of people in the street. Absolutely. They're defying it. They're saying, "Okay, arrest me. I don't really care." Yeah. So I think that's so I think that starts to enable other people. Mm-hmm. I think do you see what I'm saying? So absolutely, the fact that people are not allowed to speak up, and you talk to me like, yes, as a Jewish woman, but you see all these Jewish Voice for Peace, Jews for the Palestinian Right of Return, if not now, when, not in my name ever. Like I said, by accident of birth, I am allowed birthright. You talked about 23andMe. When I did 23andMe, I was horrified I was like 99.9% Ashkenazi Eastern European Jew.
Right.
And I found that with a lot of my Jewish friends, exactly the same. We've never had any right to, I don't have one iota of Semitic blood, not one iota. It doesn't exist in me or in the overwhelming majority of Jewish people. And yet, those are the people that went in and stole the land. And those were the settlers that from Brooklyn by way of Eastern Europe. And it's that because they were told it's their birthright, but yet generations and generations and generations of Palestinians who have been there forever, because it was Palestine, it wasn't Israel. Israel wasn't created, it was stolen.
Yeah.
And there's a really big difference. And so, so I think people didn't know this. They didn't know it. The propaganda has been so thick between Israel and the United States for so long that people didn't see this. And I think in most Western countries, but I think more here.
And I find this generation isn't a generation you want to mess with, right? Like we are now, when we take a look at Gen Z, and I think that's really what's caused a lot of this and has allowed for cutting through that propaganda. And we saw it in Iran, where the revolution in Iran was really led by young girls. We're talking high school students, maybe those that are just entering university, and they were being defiant. They were putting their lives on the line. And it was really through their bravery that others came forward. And we're seeing the same thing now, that same generation who kind of is savvy, they're tech savvy, they know how to research things, they know not to trust everything that's being spoon-fed to them, which is incredibly important. And they're standing up for what's right, which is amazing, because we've gone through so much in the last 20 years as far as recessions and inflation and the terrible economy and the housing market crash and everything that's gone on. That entire generation has really been through quite a bit with COVID and everything. And so now they're fearless, which is amazing, which is incredible. And I think that's a lot of what we're seeing. You mentioned Not in My Name, and they were the ones that organized the sit-in at the Capitol, and a number of them were arrested as well. And I'd love to kind of get your feeling on that, because so many of the times when we try to speak up about what's going on, automatically we're shut down. You're being anti-Semitic. This is, you've got a problem with Jewish people. You've got a problem with the religion. You've got a problem with whatever. That's why you're saying this. And so it was always, it was really interesting and heartwarming to see the Not in My Name movement and the ones that you mentioned as well. But I was absolutely shocked at how they were being dealt with in the Capitol. It was
500 people, I think, or something.
Right.
300 to 500 people were arrested.
Right.
I knew they would be, and that was okay. And there were rabbis, and that were arrested. The reason why it's so important for Jews to speak up, because it kind of takes away that anti-Semitic propaganda, because Zionism is not Judaism. It's not Judaism. It's an apartheid governmental ideology. That's how it was formed. And so it takes that away, because that has been planned from the very beginning, how they were going to conflate Zionism. Let's just conflate Zionism with Judaism. Anybody who's anti-Zionist is automatically anti-Semite. And if there's just a few Jews that speak up, then you're just a self-hating Jew.
Right. Exactly.
So they'll just label you as a self-hating Jew. And that's what it is, and so that's why it's important for Jews to speak up. I mean, the last few days I've been hearing of course we all, I don't know if you know Miko Peled.
Mm-hmm. I love him.
He's amazing, and he is, I met him a couple of times. I don't know him well. I've just met him a couple of times. And his book, The General's Son, is a real enlightening book for people who really want to learn a lot. I was listening to an interview with Dan Cohen, of course, Max Blumenthal. All these people are Jewish. Gabor Mate, Holocaust survivor, Aaron Mate, these are all Jews, like totally against Zionism. and Glenn Greenwald. So they give it some credit. So it takes away the Zionism, Judaism conflation, which makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. And people believe that because it's been pushed down their throats for so long. And that's the big challenge. And for me, it isn't enough to call for a ceasefire. I mean, yes, we have to call for a ceasefire immediately and start this work. But there needs to be a complete end to the siege, to the occupation, to the blockade now. And there needs to be a dismantling of this severely racist apartheid state. Without that, this is going to be a couple more years and we'll see it again. Because the status quo is not, it's not sustainable. It's not sustainable. This is the longest occupation in modern times. It's not sustainable. That has to be dismantled. And at that point, it's got to be a government with complete equality, regardless of race, gender, color, religion. That's it. That's the only way it's going to work, in my opinion.
No, you're right. Absolutely right.
But, people say, well, that could never happen. It's impossible for that to happen because there's more Palestinians than there are Jews. Well, that's the deal, because it's the only way it can happen, in my opinion.
That's how it was before 1948. That's how, before the British Mandate, there were, you had Jews and Christians and Muslims living in Palestine together, and things were peaceful and they were great. It's really with the entrance of, like you said, this apartheid regime and really this land grab is what we're really talking about, that turned everything on its head, and that supremacy.
Supremacy is what it is. It's really supremacy. So what happens now is, like, when they talk about Hamas and they keep bringing up Hamas, I mean, the bottom line is Hamas is not in the West Bank, and they're still shooting people every day. And when you think, well, this just happened, on October 7th, but people have to understand that Palestinians, every single day for the past, well, at least 17 years, if not 75 years, there have been Palestinian children, women, elderly, killed every single day in the streets. Yeah. Every day, West Bank and Gaza. So that's what people need to understand. And the Western media, crickets. You never hear about that. Never. Again, every child. So you hear one Jewish child is, again, horrific. Not to condone that, not to justify it, but that's like major news. We're going to all out war. Yeah. What about? Yeah. It's hard to talk about whataboutism, but you've got to see that other side. It's so important in what is actually going down right now.
So with that, I want to know what your thoughts are on the possible solution to this madness that's been going on.
I think I kind of stated it when I said that the bottom line is there has to be, of course, immediately a ceasefire, because that's the most important thing right now, because what do we have? 45? I don't even know what the count is right now, and there's people in the rubble, so 4,500 people is probably the tip of the iceberg. I mean, it doesn't make any sense, So obviously there has to be a ceasefire, but there has to be an end. There has to be an end to the apartheid racist government of Israel. I mean, that's harsh. But people go, well, what should those people do? They can stay there.
Right.
Nobody's saying that I've heard a couple who said, well, they should go back to East. They're not going back to Eastern Europe. I can't even if I wanted to go to Poland, I don't have Polish citizenship. I couldn't even go there even if I wanted to. So nobody's going back to that. But where it stands now, people need to. There is no two-state solution. That has never actually been on the cards, ever. Because again, two-state solution, you might as well just say racism, apartheid. That's what a two-state solution is. Doesn't make any sense.
So how do we? So all that's fair.
I'm not a diplomat, so I don't know how to get to that place.
Yeah, that's what because
But it has to. But the problem is, like you said, it, power. Power corrupts. Absolute power corrupts. Absolutely. Joe Biden. posted something that's genocide Joe, I kind of feel that way, these, I don't get it, well, I do get it because it's just about power.
Does he actually, this can become a whole tangent, but I'm not intending it to be that. All these, and I don't want to, I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I'm just looking at history, and I'm looking at repetition of history and how we're not learning from history. And it's these patterns, right? These patterns of apartheid have taken place throughout the world, right? It's essentially the Islamic Republic coming into Iran, which is a terrorist organization. They're, we don't even know where they came from, but Mo probably knows better than I do because I'm just a comedian. I don't know much, but it's they've occupied Iran for now almost 45 years, right? So it's like, and then you had, the apartheid in South Africa, right? And then you've had all of these events that have happened, similar tactics, right? Similar approach. So whoever is and I call it a puppet, whoever's the puppet that's represented as the leader of said apartheid state, do we seriously believe they're the ones that are moving the strings, or is it some deeper hidden figure that's actually running this? And again, I don't want this to become a whole tangent. Yeah.
I think they're part of it because they're part of that deeper problem.
Yeah.
Netanyahu has been in there for 50 years in some capacity. So possibly, South Africa, pretty much the country had to be dismantled, and the whole apartheid regime that whole government had to be dismantled to get what they have now. It's still not great, but it's better.
Yeah.
And so I think the same thing kind of has to happen. But I do believe in the rallies. I do believe in the protests because I just think it shows that there is power in the people. Maybe I'm naive in thinking that.
Yeah.
But I think we forget that we're supposed to be the government.
Yeah. Right.
And they work for us.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I pay their salary.
Mm-hmm.
You pay their salaries. And they seem to forget that. And they seem to be, it happened during the lockdowns, all of a sudden, we couldn't go outside, we are paying, should be in control. 100%. And I think that's where people have to wake up, is they have to realize that we are the government.
Yeah.
And those other people kind of infiltrated their way in there and made you believe that they're not. My opinion, there are so few good, let's use the word good, politicians. Mm-hmm. So few. And then even when you think they are, then all of a sudden, boom, they kind of flip.
Something comes up.
Right. But I feel like that doesn't happen. Yeah. That doesn't happen on accident though, right? Like it's fact, and then that's when they give us option A and B and they're both equally corrupt, it's like, who do you go with?
A little bit different issues,
Yeah.
Yeah. For me, I am not a Democrat or I was, or a Republican. I'm now an independent, and there. I don't know if I should mention politicians' names.
It's fine.
Mention whatever you're comfortable.
I was really liking RFK for a little minute, and then he started talking about how he was this, staunch supporter of Israel and hanging out with Shmuley Boteach, who was funded by Sheldon Adelson. I'm like. Yeah. He's actually spewing all this rhetoric that even the harshest Israeli would be too embarrassed to say. Right. So of course that's not happening. And then what's left? It's either I have to write in your name, I don't know, or my own name, or I don't know, Cornel West. He seems to be.
I love him. Yeah.
Right. Well, he was always my favorite human, actually.
Yeah.
For a long time, So I'm kind of looking at it like that, and. So he seems to be the guy now, because I was thinking, will he really stand a chance? Maybe RFK, but no, that's not happening now. So that's for me. I don't know. I just told my political affiliation, but I was saying to one of my kids, I said, I don't know, this may be the first election I never vote for. I mean, after Jimmy Carter, who was a gem, my opinion, in my lifetime, he was the only really good leader. I know people say, oh, we had so much inflation, but that's because they were killing him from the beginning. And he's a really good man, in my opinion. And after that, forget it. There hasn't been anybody. There hasn't been anybody. And so anywhere, I don't know. Maybe you can enlighten me, because I'm not really sure. I mean, you're in Canada. I don't even want to go there, but it's just...
No, things have been pretty bad in Canada recently. Things have been pretty bad here as well.
I know.
They completely blackballed all Palestinian protests in Ontario. They've banned the flag from being used. It was things are pretty bad here as well. I've been pretty hopeful with seeing what's coming out of some of the European countries. New Zealand, I think was great. Ireland, right? Absolutely. So there's a lot of hope. I think there's a lot of hope. We need to get this old guard out. We need to really, and it's that patriarchy that we're talking about. I don't agree necessarily that it's men are the problem, or women in general are the stuff. Look at Margaret Thatcher.
How about Golda Meir? Hello.
Right. Exactly. Right. We're not talking about. We're not talking. Yeah. So, but what it is, it's that patriarchy. It's that style of government that we have. This idea of. I even have a problem with borders in general. I don't quite understand them. If we are all from this earth and born from this earth,
we're all
why do we have to? Why do we have to justify our existence on a particular place on the map, which just seems a little counterintuitive to me. But
my kids tell me that I have 3 kids, but daughter and 2 sons. My kids tell me that my generation has to die off for peace, and I'm like, that's a little insulting. I said, I didn't do this. He said, you kind of did. He said, not you, but your generation kind of did.
Yeah.
But what happens to them when they get, look, the techies, that's your generation. Hello. So I'm not sure. They're not really on board with this, most of them. They're the ones who are calling for censorship, a lot of them. Yeah. So I'm not really sure, where that all lies,
I think the person behind anything is going to make that thing good or bad.
Yeah.
So it's information or lack thereof. It's information. Information. And I think we're in an age right now where information is so easily accessible, but unfortunately, propaganda is also very easily accessible.
And the truth is very, you don't, CNN, MSNBC, Fox, of course, you don't see, they say they're just completely part of the military industrial complex, big pharma. They are, that is who pays their salary, and they don't bite the hand that feeds them.
Yeah.
And that's one of the big challenges, because everybody doesn't go online, but your generation does more. Right. And, so I kind of think that's information education. You take somebody like Bernie, okay? Mm-hmm. Bernie was full-on Zionist. He lived in Israel. He lived on a kibbutz after school. He got schooled by Rashida Tlaib because she was working on his campaign. That's how she became a congresswoman. That's how AOC became. And Ilhan Omar, it was through him. They were working on his campaign. And Rashida Tlaib, she's amazing. She schooled him. And that's how, from my understanding, I don't want to put words in his mouth, but from my understanding, that's how that came about. And that's how he became more understanding of the actual plight of the Palestinians and what Zionism actually is.
Which again confirms education and the person's intent and like inner heart, inner soul. Like if you truly you understand the pain of the world, and you see that, majority of the world are depressed, they're not happy based on obvious things we've discussed and more. It's like, so Bernie, for example, yourself, you guys, Mo, I'm just a Baha'i. I'm just a former Baha'i, but I love that. But I love the Baha'i concepts and everything. However, I think that insert any religion or ideology or system or belief. And when we put that in front of our humanity is when we usually run into problems, and we usually run into crossroads of making a choice. And sadly, a lot of these people controlling these nations are making the wrong choice for humanity. They're making the choice for either a small group of people or power, as we said earlier. So it's I feel like, it's got to be the other way around. Whatever belief you have, put that second to your humanity, because the humanity, when that's the captain of your ship, you tend to have more empathy. You tend to feel more. You tend to understand that you have that in common with everyone on this planet. And then, but it's so simple. However, I feel, again, how we're raised, the information or lack thereof, or the wrong information that's feeded to us. I don't think feeded is a word, but fed to us. But like you guys have been saying, I am hopeful as well. The fact that we have access to information so readily nowadays, you don't have to go to your local library, right? You don't have to have a full library of books and then have to vet it and verify it, who's the author, what's their back, all that can be done a lot quicker now online. And I'm guilty of sharing things that I wasn't, I didn't do a full research on, and then I was educated on it and I took it down, or, but we gotta have that grace, because that's going to be required in order to save us, right? I think there's a lot of generational trauma from all three of us have our own, generational trauma from our own upbringings and ancestors, but we have to allow each other to make mistakes, because that is being human. Humans make mistakes,
and we change,
and we change, and we learn, and allow each other to, like, hold each other's hands and be like, it's okay, and approach it all with love. And I've been called naive for that, and that's okay, right? It's fine. I'd rather pursue this with love and be naive, but see people have a smile on their face, or they put a smile on my face, and rather than just become an argument or my way, your way. That's usually when that humanity and belief get swapped. So,
or humanity should be the litmus test, right? Test your beliefs against humanity. If they're working against your basic fundamentals of what humanism is, and looking out for your fellow man, well, maybe you need to question those beliefs a little bit, right? It's when they become dogma and people aren't allowed to question them, or they're not allowed to actually deviate from those guidelines that it becomes a problem. Yeah, humanity needs to be the test.
The religion, right?
And when society allows you to dehumanize a group, that's when it's like, oh, hold on, wait, because if that happened to my people, then I would be pissed. How come I'm not, right? Just something as simple as that.
When leaders are calling them animals, listen, I happen to be an animal rights activist. I happen to be a vegan. I've been a vegan for 50 years. So for me, it's like all sentient beings have a right to be here, and they're here because they're supposed to be here. There is no mistakes. Everybody has a purpose. Every single sentient being has a purpose to be here. And when you said to be naive, well, I think being naive is the most wonderful thing in the world, because that naivete is, what does it say? Children shall inherit the earth. Children are naive. They have so much knowledge. Everything we need to learn in the world is, the younger they are, the more we can learn from them, in my opinion.
I fully believe that. I work with children, so yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
When I listen to my grandchildren, it's like when they're really young, the profound things that would come, they were so connected to the source. As we start growing, we start forgetting. We start forgetting where we came from. Yeah. And then I guess maybe when we get to the kind of towards the other end, we start remembering again, maybe. Yeah. Maybe. So I think our whole lives are about, we come in knowing everything, and then we forget. And as caregivers, you say you work with children, is to keep them remembering as much as they can, and then to get to that place where they remember again. I used to tell my kids, if they would call me, they're in college and they have a test, and they'd call me, I say, everything you need. Close your eyes. Everything you need to know, you already know. It's in the ether. Just close your eyes. It's there. Just pick it out of it. You have all the knowledge of the universe. Just know it. Yeah.
It's so true. We learn more from kids than the other way around. I always
100%. Yeah.
I remember my daughter coming to me when she was about 5 and saying, "Daddy, why did people?" Because she'd seen homeless people and we'd gone to the food bank, and she's like, "Why do people have to pay for food? I don't understand. But if we need food to be alive, why do we have to pay for it? I get it. If you want to go to a restaurant or if you want something fancy, sure, but like, shouldn't food be free?" And I was just like,
man, I got chills. I just got chills.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right.
Right?
Well, yeah.
Nobody comes in as a racist.
No.
It is taught to them. I see it. I have Palestinian friends in Santa Monica. I can't believe they're young children. They're really good friends. They're young children, same age as my grandkids' age. Their young children are being ostracized in school by their friends, people who were their friends. These are really, really young kids. And they're, like little girls who are wearing Israeli flags on their cheeks, painted. And they're going, "You're a terrorist. You're a terrorist. You're a Pakistani terrorist." Because they remember the P word. That's all they remember. And they're pushing them around, and "You're a terrorist, and you're a terrorist." And these they had to pull their kids out of school. I mean, these are really young kids and where are they getting it from? They're getting it from their parents. They don't even know what that is. And so racism is always something that is taught. So maybe if people would start teaching humanity, that wouldn't happen. Again, just slowly, word of mouth, little by little, people like you guys are beautiful. Little by little, you get the word out, and then that expands. And then if I tell 5 people, then 5 people, that becomes 25 people, and so on and so forth. And then it expands, and we can only pray and we can only hope that is what happens. That's the solution. You say, what's the solution? I don't know any other solution except people to people, humanity to humanity.
You gotta lead with love. That's it.
Lead with love.
Yeah.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful, Aileen. Thank you so much. And I know we had said half an hour, but speaking with you has just been so incredible. I'm sorry if we took more time than we promised.
Oh, no. That's okay. I was a little nervous because, like I said, I'm a little bit shy when I talk. Like if I'm singing on stage, I'm fine, just as long as, my singing can do the talking, Yeah. But it's like, you guys are great. And I totally appreciate you. And I,
thank you.
Yeah, you're fantastic. And I hope I get to meet you guys. So, you're in my neck of the woods. Maybe we will get to meet at some point.
I would love that. Nice. I would love that. It would be an honor. Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean,
I'll be making it down there. No, I'll definitely be making it down there. Absolutely.
Mo said he'll come if I pay for it. So yeah.
There you go.
What makes me crazy is what really surprises me in Montreal, because I know you're in Montreal. I have my former husband. We're still really friendly. He's from France. And so, and he still lives in Hawaii, and he would never live in the United States. He doesn't think of the United States as Hawaii is the United States. He's a bunch of cowboys, and we're musicians. He's an amazing musician, and that's how I knew him. And so, we had so we worked together as musicians and had a recording studio, but his brother, and one of his brothers, he has 3 brothers, and one of his brothers was living in Paris, and he has 2 adopted children from Morocco. And this is a while back already. This must be going back about 10 years ago now. I mean, they're grown now. One is probably 21, maybe one is 24. But this is a while ago. And they were so ostracized with all the Islamophobia in France that they chose to move to Montreal. They're still in Montreal. And I'm seeing all these posts by my niece now, and she's like, whoa, she's letting it rip there. She's great, with the whole thing, But my point is they had to go there. So I had always thought of Montreal as this kind of hub for understanding and for inclusion. And I'm seeing it's actually not.
Yeah, it isn't. It really isn't. Montreal definitely, and Quebec on a whole, has its own issues.
Was it always like that though from the get, you think? Or was it initially, as what Aileen said, like it felt like a place of
Yeah, so here's the thing. Up until the 70s, you had the English predominantly running things here, and it was an apartheid system. Absolutely, it was, where the French speaking Quebecois didn't have the opportunities. They couldn't get the jobs. They didn't have the education that they needed. They weren't brought into the game. Obviously, nothing as drastic as what you're seeing right now in Palestine or Israel or South Africa or Myanmar or anywhere else. But you are seeing, you did see a lot of that. Then after the 70s, when fortunes kind of switched, right, and the English ended up becoming the minority and the power broking, it completely changed. And so now myself as like an Anglophone, or I'm considered an Anglophone because I moved here from Vancouver. Used to drive down to LA all the time, almost every year, but ended up moving to Montreal about 7 years ago. But for now, as an Anglophone, it's not easy to be here. The only reason my daughter can go to an English school and doesn't have to go to a French school is because I graduated from an English school in British Columbia. Otherwise, she would have no choice as to what sort of schooling that she would get. If you're an immigrant, you have to go into the French system. I was talking to Pej on another episode that we had where a coffee shop was fined $5,000 for using the word espresso in a coffee shop. Like these sort of things happen all the time here. So it's that pendulum swing. It's kind of like what we talked about, where hurt people, and that's kind of what's happening. Is that they went through quite a bit under English rule for so long that now that pendulum is swung in the opposite direction, and I'm hoping that it's going to swing back to the middle hopefully soon. But yeah.
It's these atrocities we are seeing in the world these are all lessons. I think these are all lessons to learn from, and to have another opportunity to not repeat the same mistakes, right? And it's
That's right.
And then I think we're getting closer to that as a society, as a humanity.
I always think of the story of Abraham and Isaac. When he was about to sacrifice Isaac, and it's a story, and Gabriel comes down and says, stop, basically. And to me, I've always looked at that as Abraham just went, whoa, because his father was an abusive father, as the story goes. His father was an abusive idolater, et cetera, et cetera. And at that point he said, as the father of this land, I need to break the chains right here and now and stop the killing and stop the abuse, because he was just about to kill his kid. Wow. Yeah. He said, I need to stop the abuse. I know that's a little convoluted there, but, and I thought that's a great story, because that kind of sums it up. It's like, to break those chains.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
For me, that story was always, I was just sitting here going, what kind of a request is that? And who goes along with such a thing? Like it was always a bit of a shocker to me. I kind of looked at my dad going, would you ever, I hope you would never do that. I don't get this.
Your father, you wouldn't even give you a second thought to take a bullet for your kid. It's
exactly. Exactly. So it was always an odd one for me. I find a lot of those parables and stories they
but when you see that meaning, it's like, that makes sense.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
So, there we go.
Aileen, we've kept you on way longer than we promised.
I appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
I appreciate what you do. You guys are amazing. If I could just be like one little blip, and you guys are reaching more people, and I just think it's great. I please don't give up the fight, and it's really more like sometimes I don't even like the word fight. It's like, just stand up for humanity. It's not really a fight for humanity. Stand up for the truth.
Yeah. All right. That was what a lovely lady.
Incredible, right? Absolutely amazing. That was without a doubt an absolute pleasure speaking with her. And I know that we wanted to have a discussion, you and I, afterwards. And I know that there's a lot for us to discuss, especially with a lot of what Aileen gave us. But I just didn't want to end that interview. So you know what? Why do we say, let's make this the first part of this episode and this topic? I think we definitely need to sit down and have a discussion as to, you know, what's been going on. Some of the news that we're seeing coming out as well. So you know what, this will be a TBA to be continued. I think at this point. Exactly.
The name change again. No,
there you go.
TBA. No, yeah, 100%. That's a great idea. So then, yes, everyone, then, first of all, please subscribe if you are interested in humanity. Just kidding. That's such a big pressure. Like, subscribe if you like humanity. No, you have to. No, but no, subscribe to our channel. We're building this thing up, and you know, we know we build it as a lighter podcast. I tried to throw some light humor in there, but you know,
it was completely inappropriate. But
yeah, it's okay. I will die on that hill. No, it's we'll have lighter episodes as well. This podcast is meant to be about present-mindedness and how we feel at the time of the recording and the topics that we want to discuss. And you know, Mo brings his expertise and I bring my comedy, and that is usually how it goes. But yes, so this is part one. We will have a part two where Mo and I will discuss Aileen's brilliant mind and heart, and we'll discuss our thoughts on that and some current events updated events regarding this crisis. But for now, subscribe to this channel, and I'm Pej.
I'm Mo.
We'll catch you on the next one.
All right.
I am the Jewish grandmother, a first-generation American. My parents were refugees from Eastern Europe. So most of my family was killed in the Holocaust. People always ask me why, as a Jew, would you be doing this? And I'm like, first of all, as an American, it's horrifying that we are supporting the genocide of the Palestinian people. The United States, England, France, we are completely complicit in the annihilation of the Gazan people. So for me, as a Jewish American, I feel doubly complicit. I have so many Palestinian friends. I've been active in the Palestinian support movement for decades. I'm posting a lot of things on Instagram saying, I'm so happy you're posting this. Young people that are millennials, my children's age. And they're saying, I can't post anything because I'm going to get fired. They're afraid to post, but they support it, but they're afraid because they know what the repercussions would be. And they can't. And that's horrific. And it's not about religious, Jew, secular. It doesn't have anything to do with that. And this is not a personally, I don't think it's a religious war. It's about land. It's about freedom. This was their land. People say it's a very complicated issue. It is not complicated. And she said, look, if you don't think I know what's going on with the apartheid and genocide, of course I do. She's a lawyer. She knows what's going on. She said, but I'm Jewish, so I don't care. That's what Nazis said. That's what Germans said.